Howdy YouTube, an awesome review for you today, and that's because we're taking a look at the Minichamps 1/18 scale Benetton B194. Really excited to get my hands on this, so I guess a little bit of background info on this model. And also why I picked it up, I guess. So as a kid in the 90s is when I grew up, and I absolutely loved cars, Formula One. In particular, Benetton, my favourite team. Always loved the blue colour scheme. They did originally have the yellow and green scheme, and then they slowly added in a little bit more blue, and then it became a lot of blue, and then it became Renault, which introduced a little bit of yellow. So that's the backstory, I guess, on the team. Why it's so significant is because, too, you had Shuey, who was Le Mans driver for Mercedes with the Sauber Mercedes team. He moved to Benetton. That was his break in Formula One after he did a race for Jordan. And then he progressed through and he won his first world title with this car in a little bit of a controversial fashion. Obviously, Senna got killed that year, which deprived a lot of us of what would have been some epic battles and really allowed Shuey to, I guess, not establish himself in Formula One because he was already very competitive before before Senna passed away. But without Senna there to challenge him, I think that really let Shuey go and was a big part of the success that he achieved. Why I wanted to get this model is, again, as a kid, and if you've seen my channel, I've got a lot of Benetton Formula One models, a lot of Formula One models in general. Now, this car was originally released by Paul's Model Art, which was, I guess, the Minichamps version of the 90s, right? But they never released a driver figure, at least not mass-produced anyway. So I was never able to find this particular car with the driver in it. So recently, Minichamps have been re-releasing some of the older models and re-releasing some models of older cars. And this was one of them. So when I saw it, I absolutely had to get it and jumped on it. I'm really keen to add it to my Benetton collection. Ford-powered as well. I'm a big Ford fan. So you can't go too wrong. So with that, let's get the car opened up. And here we have the car opened up and out of packaging, and it looks awesome. I love this era of Formula One, the early to mid-90s, really until 98. 98 is when you started to get the shit, which is what modern Formula One has become. You got the groove tyres being introduced. The cars were still great with the big V10 engines, but again, chalk and cheese. You cannot compare. This car, I think, visually is awesome. The designs, the line, it's so smooth. It dips down. It looks like an arrow. This is what a Formula One should look like, not the monstrosity hybrid rubbish that we're getting now. And I think a big problem with Formula One is at this time, yes, it was the pinnacle and you're starting to get some aero, like these side pods and things like that. But a lot of the cars were built, say the late 80s, early 90s, drawn by hand. You had really good designers, Gordon Murray. You had Adrian Newey as well on the scene back then. A really, really great time for the sport and motor racing in general. Even Le Mans sports car racing, the cars looked great. There was crossover appeal. You had a lot of F1 drivers driving sports cars and sports car drivers getting a break in F1 as well. Just things that you don't see these days, and it's a real shame that global motorsport, in particular Formula One and sports cars, which to me are the two pinnacle categories, are so disappointing. But that's a video for another day. In terms of this model, visually it looks great. Love the blue, love the color scheme. Very accurate to how we looked, or how the car looked, I should say, at the Brazilian Grand Prix in '94. Everything's very accurate as well. Let's see what it's got on the bottom. Minichamps, Benetton. It doesn't actually tell you what type of Benetton it is, which is a little bit interesting. Wheels do turn as well. One of the things I really like too is you've had a lot of other die-cast manufacturers come on the scene lately making Formula One models, which traditionally, again in the 90s, you had Hot Wheels that made a lot of Formula One cars, especially the mid to late 90s. You had Paul's Model Art, which then was absorbed and became what is the current Minichamps. Then basically it went to just Minichamps for a long, long period of time. And now you've got Spark, you've got TrueScale, you've got so many other manufacturers making these things. So I guess the competition is there, but the price is still very, very high. I was able to pick this up for $200, which to me is still quite expensive, but not as expensive as some of the F1 models that are out there today. So in that respect, I guess it's not too bad. But again, a look at the car from the front. As I say, these were my favorite cars. Look at the thin front wheels and the thick rear wheels. That's something that you don't get a lot of these days. And I know, you know, they're trying to make Formula One more eco and environmentally friendly, but the people that watch Formula One don't care about that stuff. In all seriousness, we want to see good racing, and whether it's hybrid or petrol or whatever, you just want to see good racing, and you need some sound aspect, you need an element of risk within reason. But even what they're introducing with the new Halo system and things, just go to a jet fighter cockpit and you'll solve a lot of problems. The cars will still look cool. I played F-Zero, the futuristic racing game, as a kid. Make them look like that. Make them look like a spaceship if that's what you really want. But the stuff they're doing now, the cars just look horrendous. So let's compare this car to a lot of the other Benetton and Shoei Formula One models. Okay, so I've tried to get a somewhat decent comparison for you guys, but there's the car in 94. Then you get to 95, which is, again, one of my favorite F1s. I think visually it looks great. Then you get to his Ferrari in 96, 97. We have a massive jump to 2004, and then we have the Mercedes in 2010, and probably the worst comeback in sports history, Shoei's run at Mercedes, which was really disappointing. The actual car itself, I thought, looked great, and I love the color scheme, but a shocking comeback. But again, you got some really cool looking cars. The Benetton compared to the car the year after still looks good. You can see the differences. Look at the rear wing. Look at even the front wing. They're, you know, completely different cars. The size of the side skirts, just the design. You can slowly see the transition. Just compare again. Look at the Ferrari, how beautiful that looks. That's an awesome looking car. But a really cool model. I can't recommend it enough, especially if you're a big Formula One fan. Shoei, the most successful Formula One driver to date, going through a lot of tough things at the moment, obviously, with his injury. So we'll see what happens there. But a really cool car, a really great season of Formula One that ended with some controversy with Shoei taking Hill out, but I can't recommend this enough. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review on the Benetton B194.